All right, welcome back to DTR's YouTube channel. I'd like to start by saying thanks to all that have recently subscribed and have tuned in to check out some of the videos. It's highly appreciated. So thanks a lot, and let's get on with the next video. So if you've been following along with our 442 project, we just got the wheelhouse and the quarter done, and in the process of all that, I got some parts back from sandblasting, doors, fenders, the deck lid. The deck lid, I stripped the outer skin of the deck lid with sander. I get nervous about getting panels like that sandblasted because they can easily get warped. My guy that I use for sandblasting is pretty good. I've never really had a problem with anything he's done for me. But when you have a big, large skin panel like that, there is that margin that something can happen. So the outside of the panel, I did strip myself to bare, but the inside was sandblasted. And like most parts or bodies that you send out to get blasted, you do find stuff that you weren't expecting. So with that being said, let's take a look at what we found and check it all out. All right, so starting with the deck lid, as usual, we have some pretty standard areas. Now sandblasting, there's still some caulking and stuff that I need to get out of here. The sandblaster doesn't usually take all that stuff off. Got a little bit of a rot hole there, not a big deal. Sometimes, depending on the size of the rot, will determine how I repair it, whether I cut out a patch and really get into it, or do I braze it or oxygen weld it, gas weld it to fix it. Now see this edge right here, too much light. This edge right here is all chewed up as it is over here. There are some spots down in here, like little stuff like this. I can easily clean this stuff out and then like braze those types of holes shut. Gonna get this caulking out of here. There's probably more crap underneath that'll have to get repaired. But the one thing, well, I mean, for what this is, you know, this could easily just be epoxied and seam sealed and, you know, easily kind of looked over. But what I'm seeing is all this crap underneath here, which is probably some kind of body filler. So best bet is to cut some of this out. Maybe I'll come back maybe ½ an inch and cut this layer off to get this crap out of here. Address what's underneath it first and then repair those areas. Same with here. It's not rusted on the outside, but I got something going on underneath here, and it's probably rust that's building up. So best bet is to just cut this section out and clean it, put something on it, and then weld a new piece in, because leaving this crap in here again is just an area for moisture to keep growing. That stuff in there doesn't belong in there. And because I got crap and problems underneath, I can get that addressed as well. So those are just some areas on the deck lid that I'll need to fix. And that was about it on that. It's not bad at all on this side. The doors, on the other hand, have the traditional GM lower front corner rot. I've done a bunch of these repairs in the past, making this piece. I should almost investigate or look to see if they make patch panels for these types of doors, because I've done so many of these. I would think that somebody would start making patch panels for these, but I can make this and repair all that, because when this comes off, there's another layer, a structure layer underneath the skin that over the years moisture and debris and stuff gets trapped in there, and then it eventually rots out. This bottom lip of the door, this is the passenger door, is really good. The outer skin, though, we'll see in a few minutes, is not that great. But here's the driver door, and the same thing. Got that same area with the same rot. Now going down, got a little hole there. Got a little colony here of holes. This kind of stuff, I think I'm just gonna braze and close up rather than getting into a huge repair, because now that it's blasted and clean, I can braze all that stuff up, as well as I'll be able to get something on the inside of the door. I always coat the insides of the panels with stuff to help with rust prevention. So if there is any more crap in there, it'll help slow it down. That's the door. I'm not sure if I want to do something with this corner. It almost feels like something's starting to happen. I may have to take a look at that. The outside of the skin feels okay. These doors, the corners of the doors, always in these areas tend to rust out too, because again, it's layer over layer, and stuff gets in there over the years, and moisture happens, and they end up rusting out. But these, I don't know, these seem kind of okay. The fenders are not the fenders that came on the car. These are better replacements. This one's pretty nice. I do have signs of where the trim holes once were, and somebody already closed them up, but I can clean all that out and put the holes back in it. I did close up the holes that were in the fender where the emblems that were used on this fender were. This fender has already been repaired. You can see here here, all this is already fixed. This is in relatively good shape. We'll look at the outside in a few minutes. This fender, on the other hand, needs that work done. We got a little rot here. Obviously this rot, I'm trying to get a good view of this. This whole outer skin is starting to show signs. I'll flip the stuff over and take a look at it from the outside. But I do have a replacement patch panel that I'm gonna repair this. Other than that, like this fender has never had trim on it, so I'll have to put all those holes for the trim on that. Overall, these are a good starting point as far as the sheet metal goes. Not too much to do. I've worked on much worse. So I'm gonna flip the panels over and we'll take a look at what they look like on the other side, what I'm in for. All right, so outside of the deck lid, we got these holes do not belong here. This must have been off of another car, but the only molding holes or emblem holes I have are these. But these over here, these were just filled with Bondo. But I'll close those proper. And other than that, this, like I said, this I sanded clean by hand with a sander, but then my blaster did clean out the lock area and some of these rusty spots along the bottom edge, thankfully. So those are cleaned up a bit. Now the doors, this door looks decent. I don't think there's any rust work on the outside of this one. Like I said, these areas usually, yeah, that does feel, I don't know. These doors, yeah, see, here we go. Got a couple little rot spots there. And then we got this area here that is all weak. And then on top of that, this door has been through some troubled times, apparently. So I guess all these holes are, I assume these are holes. I'll have to clean all this filler out of here and then close those holes up properly. Again, not terrible, but definitely more work than what I anticipated. But you never know what's underneath a 20 or 30-year-old or longer restoration. Seems like things were done differently 20, 30 years ago than what the standards are today. And then we got our fenders. This is the fender that was already repaired. Pretty okay repair. Won't take any more attention other than getting the molding holes drilled in it. And then we got this one. This is the one I have the patch panel for. I'll just take off this section here. The patch panel comes up to about here, but I only need this area. So I'll just use what I need to get that back in shape. Get my molding holes drilled in it. And that'll be ready to be primed and so on. So that's what we got going on with the next couple of parts. So I'm going to be busy getting all these little repairs done. Okay, so here's our fender. As I showed before, we got this rot here and this rot on the surface here. So what I'm gonna do is, I got my repair panel, which goes way the hell up there. And in this case, it's not necessary. So where I'm planning on cutting this is just maybe a 1/4 inch or so, 1/2 inch or so below this little body line here. What that'll do is when I weld this, it'll be near the bends in the metal, which will give the metal less tendency to want to warp and do its own thing. So I got to cut this skin off. I have a brace under here that goes from about here over to here, and then we have our brace here that goes all the way up the fender. So there's a bunch of spot welds on the end, a bunch of spot welds on the bottom, and when it comes to that, you can do that work, getting the metal off however you want. I'm not crazy about spot weld drills, and they do work, but I have my own tricks and ways of doing it, and I feel like I get it done even quicker. But the first thing, what I'll do is I'll lay out my original panel and my repair panel with some measurements of where I'm gonna measure up to do my cut, and I'll measure them the same way so that I can mark them the same way, so that when I put this on, this is going to land exactly right back where it's supposed to. Now we do have a guide by having the inner structures here to marry against, but it still doesn't hurt to take those measurements and cut the panels the same shape and the same way so that they go right back where they're supposed to, so that when you put it back on the car, all your body lines and such line up with the adjoining panel. Because I've seen it done wrong. One other thing is sometimes you got to be careful too, doing these kind of metal repairs on panels when panels off the car, because some fenders or some panels, depending on how you have them, even setting on a fender stand, they could tweak that when you're putting a replacement piece on, it may remain tweaked and weird. So then you try and put it back on the car that you're working on, and it turned into something that it never was before. But in this case, you know, we're only doing this small patch across the bottom. But one trick start by taking these measurements is getting a mark consistently on the original panel and on the new panel, so you have something to measure off of. Also, you want to have some sort of either a fabric tape or like I have this metal ruler that flexes. You don't want to have something that's rigid that you're trying to take measurements with. You want something like this so you can make a very deliberate measurement across your panels. But starting with getting a good mark to measure from on these corners of these, if you take, like this is a metal ruler, if you take the metal ruler and you scrape it across, it's going to give you the absolute, I don't know if you can see the line, that line there, that's the absolute corner of this bend. That's the middle of that bend. So do that on here. That sounds wonderful. All right, and now you can take that line and take your ruler and measure up and then make a mark up on this side. Come over to this panel, do the same thing. Even this being sandblasted, you could still scratch it, and I can still see a very distinct line that I could then use again for my ruler to make my marks, so that when I measure up 4 inches on here, I measure up 4 inches on here, and I measure everything and mark everything and cut everything the same way. When I put this on and put this onto here, I'm not worried at all that this isn't gonna line up with anything else. So again, that's just a little, and you could do that with even when you're doing doors with little body lines in them. You can, I showed in another video, pencil, grind the side of the pencil off, and then you can rub onto the high spot. Usually works on primer. It's obviously not going to work on something black, but it's one way to get a mark to see about where your highest point is. This isn't a sharp line, so it's not going to give a good mark, but in any case, that's another little tidbit. But that being said, I'm going to start making some marks, start laying out, cutting this. I'm probably going to cut it, like I said, now this is a curve. This is curved, this isn't straight, but regardless, I'm going to probably measure up one measurement here and then the same measurement back here, cut a nice straight panel, or straight line I should say, and do this the same way so that I'm going to have consistent lineup when I go to put this onto here. So that's where I shall begin, and let's get started. All right, that wasn't too hard. Got my old rusty crusty piece knocked off. As you saw, I made my measurements, struck my line across. I then copied the measurements, did the same thing on this piece. Getting this off, relatively easy. And again, as I said earlier, you could go around, find all your spot welds, drill all your spot welds, cut the piece and pull it off. I think it's faster for me. I cut the big section out. I then take my wire wheel and wire wheel the remaining area, and wire wheeling over the bare metal will reveal where all the spot welds are. So when it comes to the spot welds, I feel it's easier to just cut like an X across the spot weld rather than using a spot weld drill and drilling all the spot welds. But to each their own. Do it however you feel comfortable doing it. Again, for what spot weld drills cost and rotor broaches cost and what cutoff wheels cost, it's easier to get the metal off with a cutoff wheel, and it's cheaper. And as you saw, it didn't take me long at all to get this apart. But that's my method, and try it. Maybe you'll like it. So got the piece off, wire wheeled all the rusty area, get all the loose scale and rust off, clean it up pretty well, put some weld through primer on it. Then, as far as this piece goes, this piece wasn't cooperating with me. I believe that this curve here might be slightly different and less defined as this original curve was, because when I originally put it on, this side over here was towards the back. It wasn't lining up. The whole panel was essentially this way. So to get it to move over, I just opened up this flange with the vice grip to allow this to come over just that little bit. Now I'm lined up on both edges, and once I weld this to the fender, I'll leave this for later, get this nice and secure, and then I'll just either squeeze this, or you can hammer and dolly it and remarry this flange back to the structure flange. Pretty simple thing to do, but getting these points lined up correct is crucial. And again, if it was worse, you would open up this even more to get it to, even if you had to almost flatten it, that you had to move it that much further. Once it's secure, you can then roll it back around the structure to get your back edge back where it needs to be. And again, it's going to marry right to this, so it's just going to follow this contour. So it isn't going to be out of whack when it goes to marrying this up to the rocker panel on the car. But I've got all my plug weld holes punched already. The weld through primer's on, so it's on to welding this thing on. Let's check it out.
Okay, there it is. All welded up, all ground. Plug weld's all finished. Lines up beautifully, edge to edge. So that looks like this was the only thing I had to do on this fender. So there you have it, and I guess we're moving on. Okay, we got our deck lid done, fender done, outside of the door done. Now we're on to something a lot more complicated. And as I showed earlier, these corners of these doors, and they're exactly the same on both doors. They're rotted exactly the same way, and this is such a common thing. So I'm going to start by showing you this. Pretty fascinating stuff, huh? Well, this is what's going to make this. But rather than turning this video into a marathon, I'm going to wrap this video up and say tune in for the next video to see how I make these pieces. I'm going to have to use a series of metal shaping tools to do the different bends and forms to get this to be made in one piece to fit on these corners. So it's going to get in depth, and I'd rather just start a whole nother video than make this video go on and on and on. So tune in for that. Thanks for watching this video. As always, thanks to all the new subscribers, all the current subscribers. I really do appreciate all the support. Thanks to everybody that's been following on all the other forms of social media that DTR is on. So until the next video, thanks again for watching, and see you next time.